Good evening, everyone. Hello. I'm Rebecca Price with Nashville Public Library, and I want to welcome everyone here tonight at MLK for tonight's Then and Now program, The History of Disabilities in Our Community, Living with Physical Disabilities. This series is presented by Vanderbilt University and hosted by Nashville Public Library Special Collections, which is home to two of Nashville's beloved community spaces, the Civil Rights Room and the Votes for Women's Room. We are honored to host this series and are thankful to all of you here tonight and for those watching live on YouTube. As such, please be mindful that we are recording tonight's program. Before we begin tonight's program, let us be reminded that we occupy the ancestral and traditional lands of the Cherokee, Shawnee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creek nations. We are humbled and we honor all the ancestors of this land on which we meet today, from the elders who have gone before to the generations to come. We are now in our third season of Then and Now, where we have shared stories and built community with Nashville's diverse population, from a three-part series on Black Nashville to immigrant communities from the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and Central and South America. As we continue our journey to learn more about our neighbors, we are now exploring and focusing on communities with disabilities, whose stories are often overlooked or taken for granted. Tonight, we begin our journey with learning and welcoming Nashville's community living with physical disabilities. It is now my pleasure to introduce Vanderbilt's Dr. André Churchwell with us tonight in his role as Senior Advisor to the Chancellor on Inclusion and Community Outreach.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Next slide. I like saying that. Great. Next slide. There you go, right there. Hold there. Well, thank you. And Rebecca, thank you for always introducing this program. And thanks for all the folks that have come out on this nice, brisk night. This is our 13th program in our series of Then and Now, the History of Minority Communities in Nashville. This program is the first of a number that will examine the history of our communities with disabilities, stories that aren't often told publicly and aren't given the light of day, we feel. So we'll look at those stories from people who have physical disabilities tonight. Subsequent programs will deal with those who are blind or have visual impairment. We'll also do a program on those that have hearing or speech disabilities. In putting this set of programs together, it was immediately apparent to all of us that there are those with multiple disabilities. So there'll be people who may have more than one. So we must keep that in mind and be cognizant of that as we prepare each program. Given this reality, we will extend these programs into the next academic year to include our communities with intellectual disabilities and a program specifically to highlight the artistic skills of this important and diverse community. And there are a lot of people with a lot of talent out there. As with many minority communities, the services and support they receive is a combination of not-for-profit activities, private philanthropy, and state and federal government support, all brought together by leaders from those communities, or their families, or their allies, who serve this nation fueled by their own moral compasses and selfless commitment to do this task. Today, we will hear from a number of our community members with disabilities and their allies. I was educated and assisted along by my colleagues from the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center, led by Jeff Newsel, the director there, and from the Bud Wilkinson Center, the Audiology Department of Hearing and Speech, by the former chair and my good friend Anne Marie Thorpe, who put me in contact with a number of people who are actually on the program today. Our community historians who aided me today are Megan Hart, who's on the stage, Director of Tennessee Disability Pathfinder at the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center, and Wanda Willis, former Executive Director of the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities. I could not have put this program together without their help. In a minute or so, I will introduce our community leaders who are also remarkable representatives of this important community. They will share their stories of success, triumph, failures, and also stories of market resilience, which they have. Before we proceed with the presentations, my co-partner who's supposed to be with us today, Samara Lee, who is the research professor of political science and law at Vanderbilt University and co-chair of the Vanderbilt Project on Unity and American Democracy and founder, she's a busy woman, and CEO of Millions of Conversations, could not be with us tonight because of a sudden family issue. But she has sent to us one of her stalwarts who will be helping us at least describe for us what is the purpose and role of the Millions of Conversation program. That's Evelyn Angelica. I almost got that right, I think. And so we'll have her get up and tell us a little bit about Millions of Conversation, Evelyn. Share that. They've been a great partner in helping us put these programs together. Next slide, please.
Adjust this here. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good, good, good. Thank you all so much for making your way here to such an amazing program tonight. We know it is frigid out there, but you all have made your ways to the seats that you're sitting in. And like Dr. Churchwell shared, I am Evelyn Angarica. I'm a program coordinator for an organization here in Nashville called Millions of Conversations. And we are dedicated to uniting Americans around their common values for a shared future. And so in layman's terms, the easiest way I can describe our efforts in doing that is making sure we are partnering with local organizations and partners to be able to make sure that all of our voices are heard and everybody's story is shared. And so a lot of our programming is geared towards making sure that every person feels heard, seen, and valued. And we often say we are pushing towards bridging our divides as a society. And so with Millions of Conversations, we're honored to be partnering with Dr. Churchwell and the Nashville Public Library in this effort, and we're honored to have each of you here today. And so I believe that each of our stories is what makes us an essential part to honoring our differences that can allow us to imagine a better future for tomorrow. So thank you all so much for being here. I hope you go home restored, especially coming off of a holiday weekend. And let's continue the conversation afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. We kind of feel the power of storytelling is really important. We could talk about science and biomedical engineering or medicine, but I think to get the stories told from those that have lived this life dealing with the physical disabilities that they have is probably the most central way of conveying to the Nashville public, the Nashville community, their roles and their important value in this growing metropolis of Nashville. And so I think that's one of the key purposes of why we will continue doing these stories about our minority communities. So thank you, Evelyn. Our template has not changed, so please follow the program that you have there. We have two guests I'd like to introduce before we introduce the community leaders who are further down the panel here. I'd like to have Jordan Thomas please stand. Jordan is founder of the Jordan Thomas Foundation. They do remarkable work on making sure that those who can't afford prosthetics have access to them. Jordan, please come up to the mic there. And I'd like you to share that story of your brief life story and also what you've been able to accomplish. Thank you, Jordan.
Can you guys hear me? I'll just hold it. Good evening. Hello. My name is Jordan Thomas, and I am so thrilled to be here with just this incredible community. You are my people, and I am grateful to be here. And I want to thank you, Evelyn and Dr. Churchwell. I think often the work that you do, I think you don't receive the praise that you are much deserving of. So thank you for what you do. I really appreciate both of you. So like I said, my name is Jordan Thomas, and I am the founder of the Jordan Thomas Foundation. And it started one afternoon 20 years ago. I was in a boating accident in which I was suddenly struck by the boat propeller and lost both my legs below the knee. And so here I am. I was this fully able-bodied kid, and all of a sudden I'm a part of a community that I never had any expectation of being a part of. And so when I was in the hospital, I came to find and came to learn that kids are often denied access to the prosthetic devices that they need. And as a 16-year-old kid, that was a reality that was just deeply unacceptable to me. And that came from a place of privilege for me, and that I realized that I would have the prosthetic care that I was going to need for the remainder of my life. And so I realized and recognized that I had a responsibility to help serve these kids. And so while I was in the hospital 6 days after my accident, I started the Jordan Thomas Foundation. And so what we are committed to doing at JTF is we provide prosthetic devices to kids until they reach adulthood. Kids are often, if any of you have kids and realize how quickly your kids grow through their shoes, it's very similar with prosthetic devices. So kids can get maybe 8 months, 1 year out of a prosthetic device. And so often much of the struggle that we face today, and I'll get into this here shortly, is that insurance companies don't cover activity devices because they're not medically necessary. I cannot imagine anything more medically necessary than for this young man here to have the opportunity to go run and play on the playground. And so beyond prosthetic care, we have grown since in the 20 years that we've been in existence to support 175 kids and families. And what we've come to learn, and like we experienced tonight, is the power of community. And so we've connected families with similar families. When we've been able to have families that have been through this journey of physical disability and living with limb loss and limb difference that are new to the community, to connect with people that have been down that path, and to highlight and to shine a bit of light along that path when it's at its darkest. So beyond all of that, the mental health resources and scholarships and prosthetic care that we're providing these families and we're making the commitment to, we're actively working on legislation here in the state of Tennessee to require insurance companies to cover prosthetics. Yeah, thank you. I needed that. And I'll be careful with my words here, but you might be able to imagine that is not the most receptive makeup there on the Hill for this kind of initiative. I'll say that. There you go. So, but yeah, so we've been working for the past 3 years on trying to pass legislation here in Tennessee. It has been an uphill battle, but that is a core pillar of what we do at JTF, is the dream of ultimately passing legislation in all 50 states to ensure that prosthetic devices are covered. Our fundamental belief is no matter where you live, no matter who you pray to, children deserve access to childhood, period, full stop. So I'm really deeply honored to be here. There's not a day that I wake up and put my prosthetic devices on and don't know why I exist on this earth, and that is to advocate for these children. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'll pass it back over to Dr. Churchwell.
You can see there are many, many rich and important stories to be told, and we can't tell them all, but it was really useful to connect with Jordan, for him to share that, because that is certainly an access point, problematic access point that a lot of young kids have. My next guest is an old friend. He's not that old, but he's an old friend, Bill Snyder. Bill is a journalist and an author, and the relevant parts of him is that he was an old partner of my dad at the Nashville Banner, my late father. But in his role tonight, it's as a co-author, actually, of a book written with Dr. Philip Channon, who's a Vanderbilt professor. And the book is about Dr. Channon's mom. And it's he co-wrote this with Dr. Channon. His mom was an amazing woman, and Bill can share the story of who became an educator at Meharry Medical College in the dental college with her disability that she acquired during her life. And so, Bill, can you please share that story? Yes, please. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Churchwell. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm really grateful to you for inviting me. Margaret was a 24-year-old dental student in Houston in June 1941 when the mast of her sailboat contacted a high-voltage power line that drooped over the San Jacinto River. It sent a surge of like 12,000 volts through her body, and her arms were burned so badly that they had to amputate them at the shoulder to save her life. She was devastated, obviously, by that. But the dean of the dental college came to visit her and said, listen, you're going back to dental school and you're going to graduate. We have plenty of dentists with hands. We need one with a good head. And so that's what she did. She went back and she married and raised 2 boys. She learned to drive. She benefited from modern prosthetics at UCLA after World War II, and then taught preventive dentistry at Meharry Medical College and the dental school for more than 20 years. And along the way, she became an advocate for people with disabilities. She was invited by President Jimmy Carter to attend the 1977 it was the White House Commission on Handicapped Individuals in Washington, D.C., and she became nationally known for that. And I guess one other vignette, when she was learning to drive, she had specially designed prosthetics. She had a retrofitted car. She moved back to Tennessee and had to take the driving test, and the Tennessee State Trooper was pretty skeptical and, in fact, probably a little nervous about getting into the car with her. But when they finished the driving test, they pulled up to the station. He got out, took off his hat, and he said, "Ma'am, may I tell you something? You are the best driver I ever saw." So that was her personality, and I was very glad to do the book with Phil. And I did have a list of people that I wanted to thank, because it's hard to get the message out sometimes, as Dr. Churchwell talked about. And so we're very grateful to Vanderbilt University, to the Nashville Public Library, to the Public Library Foundation, to the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center, the Tennessee Disability Coalition, the Tennessee State Museum, which administers the Tennessee America 250 project, 250 years, and they just included Margaret in their Voices and Volunteers page, and the Vanderbilt Bookstore for helping to spread the word about this remarkable woman. Pleasure to be here. Nice meeting many of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Bill and Dr. Channon had a medical issue that prevented him from being here, but they're donating a couple of books to the Downtown Nashville Public Library branch. So on top of that, we'll have the ability for you to check the book out and read at some point in the future. So thank you, Bill, for doing that. Moving along, I'd like to introduce other members that are on our stage here that will be speaking later, and they are community leaders. And these are people that we were able to find and locate through work of my team up here, Megan Hart and Wanda Willis and others, to help us locate these remarkable people who are doing remarkable things in our community every day. 2 we're not able to come because of other issues. Adele Maximus and Magali Vargas weren't able to be here tonight, but we have still a stellar group to speak to you tonight, beginning with Cassandra Farmer, who's Director of Engagement and Independent Living Specialist at Empower, Tennessee. Thank you for being here, Cassandra. Edward Mitchell, who's Executive Director of Able National Resource Center and also an ambassador in that group. Thank you, Ed, for being here. He has other titles, too, and he can share those with us along the way. I didn't have enough room to put all those on this page here, Ed. Then we have Kevin Wright. Thank you, Kevin, for being here. Assistant Commissioner, Division of Rehabilitation Services for the state of Tennessee. We have Martez Williams, at-large member of the Tennessee Council of Developmental Disabilities. Thank you there, Martel. And lastly, Justin Curo, former Green Beret, who's Assistant Commissioner and Deputy Chief Operations Officer in the Tennessee Department of Children's Services. So we have a really stellar group here and a very, very accomplished group of people who can share their stories. Before we get to them, though, we will begin with our kind of community historians that have been working in the field for years, over 30 years. And we'll start with Megan Hart. Megan is Director of Tennessee Disability Pathfinder at the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center. And she'll share her personal perspectives on the history of services and support for people with physical disabilities. Megan, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Churchwell. It has been a privilege to collaborate with you and others instrumental in coordinating this event tonight. I am honored to be among the esteemed group of Nashvillians sharing our experiences associated with having physical disabilities with you tonight. Although my life in Nashville did not begin until I moved here in 2002, I want to share highlights from my childhood that are relevant to the experiences as a person with a disability, regardless of growing up in Phoenix, Arizona. Based on my short stature, people often assume that I was born with my disability. Although I was born a little person, specifically with achondroplasia dwarfism, and acquired a tracheostomy when I was 3 years old, I didn't become quadriplegic until I was 5 years old. During surgery on my spinal cord, intended to correct future complications associated with my dwarfism, the doctors made mistakes. I walked into the hospital as a typical spunky child and woke up from the procedure unable to move any part of my body except my head. Obviously, this was a major shock that changed the course of our lives forever, just as any disability diagnosis does to any person and their family, no matter what stage of life it occurs. One of the first challenges my family faced was also common to what other families of loved ones with disabilities experience. They didn't know where or what resources were available to support me. Keep in mind that this was in 1985, before the signing of the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, and later advances in technology, which made access to disability-related information even more challenging than it is today. As my mom, who is sitting here to assist me tonight, has said, there is no manual or guide for raising children, and there certainly isn't one for navigating life with a disability. Who knew 24 years later, however, I would land a job at Tennessee Disability Pathfinder, a statewide program that helps individuals with disabilities, their family members, the community, and professional support partners find and access resources, support, and services to meet their needs. It's too bad that my family and I did have Pathfinder as a one-stop place for information. But my mom did what most families still do. She asked questions to others. Not only is it more challenging to access disability information when I was a child than it is now, services are also more limited. For example, my parents didn't know where I should receive physical and occupational therapy until someone recommended a small nonprofit organization that specialized in pediatrics. It was where I learned to hold my head up again in a large ball pit filled with colorful plastic balls, like the ones you may have seen at children's play gyms. This eventually led to learning to write, type, and even help in the kitchen using my head and neck, which is how I continue to do things today. I credit some incredible therapists as well as the support and motivation I received from my family for my early and ongoing success in finding alternative ways to do things. It was obvious they weren't going to cut me any slack, for which I am grateful. The same was true for me in school. While still adjusting to life with a new disability, my parents knew it was vital for me to receive the same education in the same time frame as my typical twin brother and peers. Knowing the importance of my education was one thing, but knowing how to navigate school services was another. As my best advocate, my mom faced another question that many parents of students with disabilities face. How do I ensure my child gets the best education? Despite the education for All Handicapped Children Act, enacted in 1975 and later known as IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, in 1990, the first answer she received was a recommendation to enroll me in a kindergarten at school exclusively for students with disabilities. It wasn't necessarily a bad experience for me, but it wasn't the best fit for me. I still fondly remember my teacher, Mr. Smiley, yes, that was his actual name, who quickly recognized and advised my mom that I needed to be in a general education classroom. As a result, first grade was the beginning of my public education in inclusive classrooms. Like many aspects of my life, my positive experience at school would not have been made possible without the influence of many people, including fearless advocates who paved the way for me and others with disabilities, dedicated teachers, and supportive peers. Although part of my support services in school included a full-time aide who assisted me in moving my papers and books during classes, my friends provided natural support when feeding me lunch and participating in school activities together, such as high school student government. Despite the progress made in schools becoming more inclusive of students with disabilities that afforded me my positive experience, I know many students with disabilities still struggle to overcome barriers in school. At times, families can feel like they're jumping through hoops or navigating a maze when trying to understand the IEP process or request accommodations at school. Education is an area in which we have come so far, but still requires individuals, parents, and organizations to continue advocating for rights of students with disabilities. I made it back to Tennessee, my family's home state, when I decided to attend college at Sewanee, the University of the South. Built in 1858 as a small liberal arts college, it was not known for its accessibility. Without knowing a single person or how I would navigate campus with few ramps and curb cuts, it was no surprise that some people questioned my decision, including a couple of family members. I can't blame them, but I'm glad that I didn't allow their doubts to cause me to doubt myself. Everyone, including school administration, faculty, staff, and peers, was very responsive to my needs by ensuring that I had the same access as students without disabilities. Sometimes it was a matter of changing classrooms if an elevator was out of service, moving portable ramps to attend social functions, or having a group of strong guys carry me up flights of steps in my wheelchair. In retrospect, navigating the terrain and physical barriers wasn't always easy or necessarily the safest. Still, I would have traded the experiences for any others because I am proud of the role I played in making Sewanee more accessible to students, staff, and visitors with disabilities. Sewanee was not the first or last place I encountered physical barriers using a wheelchair. Before the ADA was implemented, my parents and siblings had to carry me up steps in my wheelchair to access various venues and restaurants. Luckily, I was young and used a manual wheelchair, which made it easier than this heavy power wheelchair. I remember the movie theater staff balancing me in my chair on an escalator before an elevator was installed to access the second floor movie theater at the mall. Even as accessibility improved, it did not always mean equal access. For example, I've had some interesting tours of the back of the house when navigating the accessible entrances to hotels and restaurants. Even on a tour at the White House, I had the opportunity to ride the accessible elevator with President George W. Bush's two Scotty dogs. Accessibility has improved so much that I occasionally take it for granted until I encounter an unexpected barrier. A few years ago, when sharing my weekend plans to attend a wedding reception at an old Nashville restaurant, my coworkers informed me that it wasn't accessible. When I called the restaurant to confirm, they were willing to accommodate me by carrying me up the steps without knowing the weight of my wheelchair. Although I was disappointed, I like to think that I've become more mature and more cautious in my decision making since college, when I opted to send my regrets to the reception. Upon graduating from college, I faced the same questions as most graduates, but having a physical disability adds an extra layer of complexity. For example, after deciding to move to Nashville, we obviously had to find a place to live. Taking accessibility into account limited the options and still required a family friend to build a ramp. The sidewalks were what attracted me most to the neighborhood where I have remained for 23 years. About the same time I moved there, the Nashville mayor launched an initiative to expand sidewalks and improve curb cuts. So some neighbors thought I was responsible for initiating the improvements on our streets. Although I wish I had that clout, I quickly assured them that I did not have that type of connection with the mayor. As we consider then and now, accessible sidewalks have made such a difference for people with and without physical disabilities and maneuvering safely, yet there still aren't enough of them. In addition to finding a place to live, I also needed to find a job in Nashville. Luckily, I had a vocational rehabilitation counselor who matched my interest in fundraising for a nonprofit organization to open position at Technology Access Center, a former regional assistive technology center. Never could I have imagined receiving a job offer on the spot at the end of a lengthy hour-and-a-half interview. After working at the Technology Access Center, I earned a Master of Education degree in counseling from Peabody College at Vanderbilt. Then I returned to the disability field when Kevin Wright hired me to work at Tennessee Technology Access Program. In 2009, I made my way to the Vanderbilt Kennedy Center when I was hired as the Education and Training Coordinator for Tennessee Disability Pathfinder. When the original director, Carol Moore Slater, retired in 2012, I had the privilege of becoming Pathfinder's second director in the history, and I remained in that position for almost 13 years. I share my career history with you as another example of how far our society has come. Years ago, people with disabilities couldn't fathom having a job. Thanks to civil rights laws, changes in employees' attitudes and perceptions, and advances in technology, many more people with disabilities are working, but it could still be better. there are still many barriers we must address that are preventing individuals with disabilities from having equal access to employment and equal pay as individuals without disabilities. When reflecting on my life as a person with physical disability, I recognize how fortunate I have been to benefit from the progress made by the leaders in the disability rights movement. Without their fierce advocacy efforts that led to significant policy changes, such as IDA and ADA, I would not have been able to pursue an education with my typical peers, achieve a successful career, live in my own home, and enjoy an active life with family and friends. As you may notice, individuals with disabilities want and deserve access to the same things as anyone else: education, transportation, employment, housing, and community involvement. Attitudinal, physical, and financial barriers can make it more challenging for us to access them. We must continue to work together to maintain and advance the progress that's been made. By being here tonight, we appreciate your interest and support. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you so much. Wow. Thanks for sharing your story here. Now we'll have a discussion between Wanda Willis, former Executive Director of the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities, and her good friend, Jolene Sharp, who's Chief Strategy Officer at the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities. They'll share their personal perspectives and experiences from their long service-related careers. I want to help them move to the center of the stage here.
Thank you very much. We appreciate this opportunity and really want to acknowledge Dr. Churchwell and the library for the wonderful series that they've done on YouTube. If you haven't watched any of the others, I really encourage it. So I really appreciate Jolene joining me tonight. She's been with the council for 7 years. So the council's a deep part of my life, and I really wanted someone here who's currently with the council to have this discussion. Well, Dr. Churchwell had given us a couple of topics that he wanted us to cover, having to do with the services that were available for people with physical disabilities in the past and what led to the growth of new services. Is one of the first things. So let's just start off with that. He had mentioned 30 years. I've been in the disability field for 50 years. I began teaching special education in South Carolina before the public law for public education. And I always said that I should have been paying those students rather than them paying me, because I learned so much. But right after that, I became a school psychologist because I honestly could not understand how kids got placed into special ed when I really thought most of them were just as smart as me. They certainly could learn. So I went through that, and I did that for a couple of years before moving to Tennessee in the 70s. So the question about what services were like, the early landscape, as Megan alerted to, was quite different than it is today. When I arrived here, most of the services in schools were segregated. The state had 3 large institutions called developmental centers. And the Clover Bottom was the one in Middle Tennessee. You're probably aware of that. When I first came, there were 2,000 people living there. And while the developmental centers were created for people with intellectual disabilities, you would find people with all kinds of disabilities in those developmental centers. Person with a physical disability that was the only issue. Maybe they had communication issue and they were placed there because there was no other place for them to be. They didn't have family to take care of them. So there were some key shifts in services that I'll mention after I came. First of all, about the time I got here in the 70s, there had been a lawsuit to move residents from the developmental centers into community programs, and that created dozens of segregated programs. By that I mean they were large programs for these people in the community. There were group homes, but the benefit was that people were closer to their homes. They weren't moved to this hospital to live. And it's significant to mention that it was always a family member who made these things possible, with lawsuits oftentimes. But I also wanted to mention that the Medicaid waivers that came in '81, that those were programs that allowed states to move the funding for the developmental centers, which was Medicaid funding, into communities. That again was a result of a parent who wrote Ronald Reagan on behalf of her daughter saying, hey, I really want her at home. If you give me a little extra money, I can do it a heck of a lot cheaper than you're doing it. And I really would love to have her home in the community. And that happened. So that shift in funding allowed a very large number of deinstitutionalized people moving. And then I think it's always important to mention in Tennessee, we were one of the very few states years ago that closed all of our institutions, all 3 of them. And that lawsuit was actually brought by people with disabilities. People First of Tennessee brought that lawsuit against Arlington Developmental Center in West Tennessee, and that program was closed. So we have no large developmental centers anymore. All of that to say we're definitely not where we need to be. You're never at the end of the road. I know so many times we would create new programs, come up with new ideas, and we would think, this is it, we've made it. But as you know, you're never there. You always have to be thinking about what can we do better, what's working, what's not working. Megan made me think about the Special Ed Act in the 70s, and when kids were then given the right for the education in the public school in the most least restrictive environment. But even then and even today, I think the accessibility of those public schools did not exist. So if the child happened to be in a wheelchair, they would end up in a program that was, not appropriate for them. So I think that's it. I can't remember where we are. I can get lost in this.
She told me I was supposed to be responsible for keeping her to time. I want to say I don't want to take on that responsibility because I could listen to this all day. But I think the question that we wanted to talk about next has to do with how the role of supporters, family members, and allies has shifted over time. You talked about how critical family members were and a lot of these pivotal changes in that move, the deinstitutionalization, moving from institutional protectionist care into a community-based system of supports that really relied on families being the engines for that change, or on people with disabilities themselves. But how has that role for family members and allies of people with disabilities shifted over the years that you've been working in this field?
Andre gave me this so I could interrupt you.
Now it's a real conversation.
One of the, I'm going to shift to the Developmental Disabilities Act, which was passed about 50 years ago. And I really didn't learn about it until I came here, and like in the 80s, and somehow it came under my purview, and I'm like, what in the world is this thing and what's it about? Turned out to be the center of my life for 30 years. Just a remarkable program that, once again, created by family members and people with disabilities. The DD Act, as it's known, created formal roles for people, for family members and individuals with disabilities in decision-making and planning and evaluating their services. So that was a real important thing. They created the councils, which required 60% of the members to be a person with a disability or a family member. They required State Department representatives from education to transportation, voc rehab, just housing, many departments that had requirements that affected people with a disability. So this agency brings everyone together, makes you look at what's working, what's not working, with the leadership of the families, come up with things that need to be done in your system to improve things. Another really key thing that happened with that Developmental Disabilities Act is they changed the definition of developmental disability. Initially, they listed categories of disability such as cerebral palsy, in those days mental retardation, epilepsy, and autism. And then within a few years, they realized that, naming the type of disability wasn't really effective. There are just too many things. And so they switched to what is known as a categorical definition. Excuse me, I've said the wrong word. Back up on that. They changed the categorical definition to a functional definition. What this did was to look at individuals who had lifelong disabilities, and regardless of the cause of the disability, the question is, what do you need? What kind of support do you need? And that made a big change, I think, in the field. I wanted to just one thing, because I thought of this as listening to Megan and others, is that this change in the DD Act to pull us all together and work on these issues. I heard Tim Shriver. I don't know if the name rings a bell. He's been over Special Olympics for about 3 decades, and he's a member of the Shriver-Kennedy family. He was speaking at Vanderbilt several decades ago, and I remember him saying something that just was burned on my brain and kind of guided my work from then on out, and that was, it's about us, not them. And what he meant is there's no us and them in this. We're all a member of the same community. If you have a disability or not, we're all in this together. It's about us doing the right things so that everyone can be included, integrated, productive in our community. We're so bad to do that and to separate people out. So that was a real important guide for me, and I think it's important for us to continue thinking about it.
You're gonna let me tell you that we're already over time, right?
What?
We're already over time.
Shh.
I think we'll just wrap up really quickly here by saying, that a lot of the shift that we've seen in the field over recent years in terms of the role of supporters and allies is that ultimately we've recognized that the person with the disability is the expert in their own life. And the rest of us are here to support and make sure that we are helping them get what they need to be successful and to live the kind of life they want to live. And as a parent of children with disabilities, sometimes that means letting my kids take risks that I'm not super excited about, but that are a part of the learning experience for any kid, including kids with disabilities. So that shift in really recognizing that supports exist so that people with disabilities can live the lives they want to, I think has been really critical in this movement. And I just think then to wrap up, Wanda, very quickly, how would you summarize kind of where we need to head next? What are the priorities for the disability movement today?
We had talked about a number of priorities, like the need for more supported housing for people, especially young folks coming out of school and wanting to be independent like, everybody else is. So where's the housing and support for these people? We desperately need more of that. Do you want to name some of these?
Behavioral health supports across the lifespan is an emerging area for our council to work on, because we're seeing the way that behavioral health impacts a person's ability to navigate life, and how often gaining behavioral health supports is hard for anyone. We know that the mental health kind of infrastructure isn't what it needs to be for the general population, and if you are someone with an intellectual disability who needs mental or behavioral health support, finding someone to meet that need is even harder. And we're seeing that need for behavioral health support affecting a person's ability to get the help they need and to be able to live the lives they want to live. So that's a huge emerging priority.
Absolutely. Parting shot.
I wasn't ready for this.
I just want to say that because this has just been a real important life lesson for me. A lot of people have mentors in their life, people that, it could be a professional person, somebody that has done the work before you, and I can tell you 100% the mentors in my life have been individuals with disabilities. They have taught me that we aim too low, that we set the barriers. It's just some comments of Megan reminded me. The community sets these barriers, and we look at a person, we think we know what the capacity is. I have been her daughter. What is she, 8?
13. Wanda can't keep up, and neither can I.
Well, when she was 8, do you mind if I say anything about her? Child with Down syndrome, reading on grade level. There are so many others that I have known for decades that have, surprised me and taught me to throw any expectations, and I look to them to just say, What do you want to do? What do we need? What do we need in place? And then work to make that happen. But just remember that if you don't know a person or you meet a person with a disability, have no preconceived notions. Sorry.
Thank you so much. That was phenomenal. We certainly found the right people so far to tell the stories, and you get a sense, and you'll get more of a sense of people who have the condition, the disability, and those that are equally connected to and building the support services and committed, as Wanda and Jolene have been in their careers. And I think that shooting too low is a problem we have for a number of things in medicine, psychology, surgery, and the like. So we always need to aim high. Next, we're going to move to our community leaders to share their stories, their poignant stories, their bios, their successes, their challenges, what they face in their lives. We're going to start with Cassandra Farmer, who is Director of Engagement and Independent Living Specialist for Empower Tennessee. Cassandra?
I want to say, as everybody else has said today, what an honor it is to be up here and to be speaking with you all tonight. Those of you who are watching online or will be watching the replay, I am sharing the stage with amazing friends and colleagues and peers that I am so honored to be in their presence tonight. Before I tell you a little bit about what I now do for work and work that I love and hold dear, I have to tell you why it matters to me. So I'm going to take you way back. We're going to time travel way back a little bit to 1982, to teenage parents who are in their 5th month of pregnancy. My mother went into labor at 3 a.m. I was born 5 months early. I weighed 2 pounds, 2.5 ounces. When I was born, I dropped down to 1 pound and 1 ounce, and I had open heart surgery at 3 days old. They told my mother not to name me, that I wouldn't live. That was all before a cerebral palsy diagnosis at 3. So we're going to go way back in time there. If you can imagine how terrifying that must have been. I have so much respect for my mother, and you'll hear a little bit more on why as I tell you a little bit more about my story. I got diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 3 years old after being told for years that I was just premature and needed to catch up. Luckily, we came to Nashville to visit family. My mom took me to her pediatrician, who said, I can't tell you how severe her cerebral palsy is, but I can tell you that your daughter has cerebral palsy. I know a pediatrician at Vanderbilt. Go. He'll see you right now. And luckily, he did, and I was diagnosed. We're still talking the 80s, y'all. So this is before the internet. Can you imagine being 19 years old, being told your child has cerebral palsy, and nobody can tell you what that's going to look like for them, what their life is going to look like? So my mother, being the incredibly tenacious person that she is, decided to research. And all she had to research in at the time were medical books, which were telling her things like her precious 3-year-old daughter would never talk, would be dependent on her for the rest of her life. Didn't turn out to be the case, but those were the realities that she thought she would be facing. So, part of my story, and I tell this part of my story not in any way to discount my incredible mother, but because it is a reality that families with children who have received diagnoses may face. My mother was 19 years old and seriously considered giving me up for adoption. Not because she didn't love me, but because she worried that she didn't have the resources to properly care for me. We got connected with Carol Morslater at Vanderbilt, who changed the entire trajectory of not only my mother's life, but of my life. She taught my mother to advocate for me, but in the process, she taught me to advocate for myself. So when I say I've been an advocate in the state of Tennessee since I was 3 years old, I'm not kidding. It's something that I hold near and dear to my heart and something that I have used over and over in the course of my life to hopefully make changes here. And we know that there are always more changes to be made. On the ride in tonight, I was talking to somebody a little bit about my story. And he said, "Man, you're courageous." And I thought to myself, I'm not courageous. I don't have any more courage than anybody else. What I do have is tenacity, absolute stubbornness, and the knowledge that if it's not me pounding on a door, asking for legislation changes, networking, creating community, helping my fellow community members navigate systems, then who? Then who? So Megan talked a little bit about her early childhood education, and I will tell you that being born in 1982, I was 8 when the ADA passed. I was fortunate enough to start at Duncanwood, which was a preschool for children with disabilities, when I was 3 years old, and I stayed in that program until I was 5. When I was 5 and it was time for me to start school, my mother was told that I needed to go to a school for children exclusively with disabilities. My mother, knowing that these people had never met me, looked at them and said, "My 5-year-old tells me I exasperate her when I ask her to clean her room." Are we sure we're talking about the same child? This became a pattern throughout my early childhood, even though I was put in mainstream classes of people underestimating what I was capable of. So then I started to sit in on what would later become IEP meetings. I'm a huge advocate for your child sitting in on their IEP meetings, even if it's just for the first couple of minutes, because it reminds people that these are real children, not just statistics, not just pros and cons, or metrics and data. It's a huge way to build advocacy and to build confidence. I went to a charter high school here in Nashville that at the time that I went was not accessible, even though I applied and got in. And they met me. My mother went to tour the school and quickly came back to me and said, "This school is not accessible. What are we going to do?" So, as we had done many times throughout my life, we called the school board. What are we going to do about this? We'll pay for you to go anywhere else in the district. We'll pay to have teachers come and teach you the art that you want to learn at our school. That's acceptable, right? I'll see you in August. Because if not me, then who? I spent the next 4 years of my life being called a six-figure student, to my face. So I can only imagine what must have been said when I wasn't in the room. But that's all right, because what other people say when I'm not in the room, I can't control. What I can control is my narrative and how I show up in the world. 3 years ago, I started a position of an independent living specialist at Empower Tennessee, which is Middle Tennessee's independent living center. In that role, I get to help our fellow community members navigate systems and hopefully create real change. I get to help people identify their goals and what independence looks like to them, because independence looks different for everybody. But we all want the same things. We want to have happy, fulfilled lives in our community. A year and a half later, I stepped into the role of Director of Engagement, which basically means I get to do lovely presentations like this. I get to speak to lawmakers and other agencies to help facilitate change. You know, all in all, I don't think I'm doing bad for that little girl who wasn't supposed to live. So we're not where we could be. We're not where we should be, but we aren't where we are. I'll tell you guys one quick story in kind of closing up my thoughts for the evening. When I was in college, I studied abroad for about a month. I was in my 20s, and I would say that I'm a fairly independent person. I have never been asked so many times in my life where my caretaker was as I was on the streets of London in my 20s, to which I, in my very sweet Southern voice, said, I don't know, probably at work right now. I'm so grateful for the ADA. Even with all of the struggles that we face every day, I'm so grateful for the systems and services that are in place, and yet encourage us, strive for us to push for more, because there shouldn't be anywhere that somebody gets asked in their 20s where their caretaker is.
I need you to write my next speech, if you could. It's phenomenal. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Next, we have Edward Mitchell. Edward's Executive Director and Able National Resource Center Ambassador with other titles. Ed, please.
All right. Well, how's everybody doing this evening? Well, thank you for allowing me to be here. I am not the director of Able National Resource Center, but I am an Able National Ambassador with Able NRC, but I am the statewide Independent Living Council Director here in Tennessee. But again, we're going to flash back and flash forward, so then and now. Remember that, then and now. So going back then, on March 29, 2003, my life was forever changed. I was riding my bicycle on a country road with my little brother when his tire deflated and he needed to go back to the house. Well, him being a little bit more of an athlete than me, I kept on biking on this road. Kept on biking and noticed there was a fast-moving vehicle coming behind me. Looked back, gave my hand signals, crossed over, and bam. Right then, that's when my life changed. That's when I entered the realm and being a person with a disability. I was left with a C5, C6 incomplete spinal cord injury, and it changed not only my life, but my family's life around me. As I'm there in Jackson General, you know, having friends come in to come see me, people from the community, because we had just moved to Jackson, Tennessee from California. Didn't know how I was going to continue to go on, but finding a sense of community really helped push me forward. Having these people that barely got to know me, supporting me and my family, and making sure that I know that I was loved and cared for and appreciated. That allowed me to go to the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and rehab hard at boot camp style therapy to make it back to high school, to get right back in the band, to get back on the bowling team, and finding that sense of community. From there, matriculating through high school like anybody else, being connected with our local Center for Independent Living and their director, Glenn Barr, at the time. One, knowing that this was going to be a difficult road and how to continue to keep going and blazing the trail forward. From there, going to church, then Dr. McClure, he was the president of Lane College, saying, I know this is a difficult road, but you need to come to Lane. I'd always looked at HBCUs being a fourth generation, graduate on my mom's side and a third generation graduate on my dad's side. I'd always had thoughts of, oh, I'm going to go to Arizona State, I'm going to go to UCL, UCL Berkeley, but or maybe Xavier. But seeing Dr. McClure then and knowing the kind of supports I need and needing to find a community and a family, I knew Lane College was the place I needed to be. Dr. McClure tapped in with the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and made Lane College, a historically black college, wheelchair accessible and accessible for the first time ever. I was blazing a trail for a college that was formed by a former slave to make it accessible for others. So once getting on to college, having that experience like any other, again, finding my community, crossing into the oldest black fraternity there, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, being a proud member. That really helped continue to shape me and continue to be an advocate. Upon graduating, working at the college as a dean of students and academic monitor, going through work life, and again, not letting this stop me, again, taking it day by day by day, going on to do a study abroad with my YUSA in Tokyo, Japan, again, finding that sense of community. Then going through work changes. Nobody tells you about work changes, but again, you go through it. Just because you're a person with a disability, changes at the college. I was so glad for that change because things happen. From there, going on to work in professional sports, working in fan relations with the Jackson Generals. You have to find your community, find your footing. So flashing back then and now, again, not letting my disability hold me back. There are a lot of people saying, oh, you should stop. You shouldn't be trying to work so hard. Why are you doing all this? Because again, who wants to be at the house? There's only so much daytime television you can consume. Even coming back from the Shepherd Center while in high school, going back to work at Little Caesars Pizza, my boss and still the owner, Kevin Colbert, making sure to make the restaurant accessible, bringing down the cash register so then I could continue to work. Again, because again, I want to be a part of a community. Then from there, leaving professional sports, I sat on the board for the Jackson Center for Independent Living, and the director there, Ms. Bev James, said, why don't you come see what it's like on the other side? So then that embarked me changing from a board member to frontline staff and experiencing being an IL specialist. And again, being able to help teach my other community members about what independence is, what it looks like for everybody, and making sure they get the resources they need. Again, never thought I'd become an advocate, but again, coming into this role, that allowed me to then springboard into sitting on different councils, such as I sat on the statewide Independent Living Council, I sat on the DD Council, other councils, getting those tools that I needed in order to become a better advocate, but continue to blaze a trail. That's when that led me to becoming the executive director of the statewide Independent Living Council. And we have 6 centers across the state that provide the 4 core services. And without having community, having people behind me, one of the best things, that I've been able to experience being an able National Resource Ambassador is being able to have my mom, my father, tag along and see the work that's being done. Because again, they never thought that after suffering a spinal cord injury that I would be able to continue to go on. Again, they weren't going to let me stay inside. But again, knowing the difficulties that could present itself and always finding a way to overcome it. So I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, my community, my fraternity, and my HBCU. Because with them, I take little bits that they've given me and I try to put them into anybody else that I meet. Again, yes, I'm a minority and I'm a minority. I'm an African-American male that has suffered a spinal cord injury. That's a double negative, but I'm not looking at it as a double negative, and I'm not letting the community see it as a double negative. I'm trying to make them see that this is someone that is contributing back to the community, that is trying to make sure that everybody knows the best kept secrets out there, such as ABLE accounts, 529A style accounts that let you save beyond your means without jeopardizing any means tested benefits. These shouldn't be the best kept secrets out there. And these are the little tidbits that I learned. And they're dragon teeth, as I've learned. Dragon teeth are when something happens, they put a little bit inside you, and then they flourish once they hit the ground. I've learned through going on, getting help from Kevin Wright, getting help from Wanda Willis, getting help from Dr. McClure, getting help from my cousin who is a Fisk graduate and Meharry graduate. Taking those little bits and putting them in my life to make sure I have those checks and balances, to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do despite my disability. I don't want pity. I don't want people saying, oh, that's okay. I just want to be like anybody else. Achieving that dream, being independent, and making sure that others with disabilities know the tips and tricks to make sure they keep going on and on. So I thank y'all for coming out tonight. And again, you got to remember, then and now. Then I had a disability at 2003. Now I still have a disability, but I'm better equipped to be independent and make sure I pass it on to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. That's spectacular. The way you used the metaphor then and now, I got to think about that as we go forward here. Next on our list is Martez Williams. He's an at-large member of the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities. Martez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Martez Williams. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for about 20 years, and I was coming to Nashville, Tennessee to visit my sister December 24th, 2002. And coming through Mount Eagle, it was 7 turns. It was drizzling a little bit. Next thing you know, I had an automobile accident. Car flipped over, flipped over, flipped over. Next thing you know, when I came to my consciousness, it was a man that was standing over me, and he said, I'm a doctor, but I'm gonna unloosen your seatbelt, but I can't get you out of the car. I said, why? He said, because your head is busted to the white meat. I was like, really? He's like, yes. So I waited till the ambulance came and all that. I went to Erlanger Hospital, stayed there from December 24th to maybe about January the 4th, 5th, something like that. And so my arm was broken 2 places, had 38 staples in my head and all that, but I was still able to walk. And so what happened after that, I was working at Nissan. And so at Nissan, you had to walk a long distance and all that. So every day I would lose my balance, and I would get drug tested like every day. I mean, once a week, like, what are you on? I'm like, I don't on anything. Come to find out, make a long story short, I got diagnosed with MS. So I've been dealing with MS, and I was still able to walk. I was walking on my own. Then I was walking with 1 cane. Then I started walking with 2 canes. Then the doctor told me, said, sir, if you keep losing your balance, you're gonna fall. And he said, you wanna keep falling? And I was like, no. So next thing you know, I ended up in this wheelchair. But that was before because I lived in an apartment building, and I would have to walk up the steps. And so by me going to Vanderbilt physical therapy is when I met a person. And so he said, man, eventually I'm gonna have to give you this wheelchair. And I didn't really want it, but he said, you're gonna need it. But I was living in an apartment building, walking up steps. And so that was in 2011. It's when I met this lady, I can't think of her name, but she was a representative, a speaker for the House. And so she said, have you ever heard of the Tennessee Blue Book? And I thought it was about cars. I was like, no, Tennessee Blue Book, what was that about? So it was about legislation and your rights and who to contact in case you had to get through this, that, and that. So I went through a whole bunch of changes from being an able-bodied person to losing my balance. Well, she'll tell you. I fell one time, and all I can remember is I asked her, I said, where's my hat at? Because I always wore hats. So it just progressed from there. So next thing you know, I got information on the Council for Developmental Disabilities, and they had this program called Partners in Policy Making. So I got in touch with them, which invited me with Wanda Willis and Jolene Sharp. And Jolene was, she was a writer. And so she always said, Martez, you got a story to tell. And I didn't think I had a story to tell. And so that led on to me talking. And with Wanda Willis, I ended up talking to some legislators. It was about the barriers that I had to deal with while I was driving. So, you know, it was issues with that, but I could go on and on. But anyways, Jolene ended up convincing me to tell her my story. And I said, well, basically, it started with, once I seen the George Floyd incident, and I said, if I was driving and I had 2 canes in my car, if I was ordered to put my hands up and get out of the car, I couldn't get out like that. I'd need my canes. I said, if I reached for my canes, I didn't want the police to think I was reaching for a weapon. And so she was like, wow, that's good. And so they wrote the article in Tennessean. And so one of the legislators in Franklin by the name of Brandon Ogle, I believe he read the article. And so he had a bill that was sitting, the House had passed it, but it didn't get passed through the Senate because the language wasn't right, which I didn't know anything about language and all that. So he said, Martez, is it possible that I could use your story when I talk to the state representatives? And I said, sure. So he said, well, Martez drives, you know, a vehicle and he has 2 canes in the car. And he wondered if he gets stopped by the police and they said, you need to get out of the car, put your hands up, get out of the car. And he reached for his canes. He didn't want the police to think he was reaching for a weapon. So that's when the legislators, the state legislators said, that makes sense. And they passed the bill, which is titled the Precious Cargo Act. And that's for anybody who drives that has a disability that is 2 pieces, well, I should have brought the papers with me, but anyways, it's a piece of paper that you get, you sign it, the doctor signs it, you give it back to the tags and title people, and they put it in the database. So if the police get behind you, you know, the police, they read your plates, and it would state, you know, that this person may need assistance or may take them some time getting out of the vehicle. So it wouldn't be like they rushing me to get out of the car. They may have to help me get out of the car. So that bill passed in 2021, and a lot of people don't even know about the bill. Even the police didn't know about it. And so I used to be on the Council for Developmental Disabilities as an at-large member. And so my situation ended this year. And so I'm a former at-large member, but I'm still an advocate. And so I just try to advocate and give my information to anybody who still drives, whether you're hearing impaired, visually impaired, physically impaired, and you drive. This information can help you always throughout the whole state of Tennessee. And I'm trying to get the bill passed in all 50 states. But it's different provisions in different states where, you know, in one state, a person may have a hearing impairment and it's different than a person who drives with a disability like mine. But anyways, I could go on and on, but I thank y'all for listening to me. And
great example of allyship between Jolene and her role and what you went through to actually do something that affects more people. John Stuart Mill said the greatest good occurs when you do the greatest for the greatest number of people. And so you've done a tremendous act there. Thank you there, Martez. Moving on, we're going to have Kevin Wright, who's Assistant Commissioner in the Division of Rehabilitation Services for the state of Tennessee, to share his story. Kevin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I got to start with my quick disclaimer. I'm here as an advocate. I'm not here in my official capacity as Assistant Commissioner. So I made all my attorneys happy. We're all good now. You know, as I was listening to some of the stories, I heard a lot of different themes and a lot of connection. One of those is community. I heard community. I heard advocate. And we all seem to have a connection to Wanda. How does that work? I haven't said this publicly, but Wanda, I want to thank you. You started my advocacy career as an adult. I'll go back a few steps and then we'll come back up to Wanda. So I was one of those students that Wanda sort of mentioned as she was talking about the history. When I moved with my family to Nashville in the early 1970s, there was no law that said I had the ability to go to a school that would meet my needs. So I went to a school in one of those segregated areas of Nashville, a segregated school, and my family and I decided, this is probably not the best place for Kevin. So we started going to different schools to see if I could maybe sneak in the back door and be a part of the school system. And most of them said, that would be great, but we don't know how to deal with situations, and you're going to be a distraction. I can tell you I was, but it had nothing to do with my disability. It was because I was a kid. So that was my first step into advocacy. I didn't know it. I didn't even know what was happening other than I kept going and everybody said, you're a great kid, but see you later. Granbury Elementary School in Nashville was the very first step in what was then even called mainstreaming. I was the first student to actually mainstream in the Nashville public school system. So I kind of set the trend, and I continued to be a distraction, but it had nothing to do with my disability. But as we moved along, I advocated for myself, but I also recognized that what I was doing wasn't just advocating for myself. I was advocating for those that are on this stage that came after me. So that's where my passion started to go. I did it all the time, not even realizing it sometimes. Went to college, had some conversations about just really funny stuff. When you have a disability, you really got to sometimes laugh at some of the awkward things. Like, for example, when I first got to the University of Tennessee at Martin, I chose UT Martin because it was flat, and I'd have to worry about all the hills and challenges. But one day I noticed in one of the buildings that this was in the late 80s, there was a sign. Actually, there were two doors that had signs that said, this is the accessible entrance. But it was at the top of 5 stairs. So I kept questioning. I'd go by every once in a while and think, this is kind of weird. I don't know what's up with that. So I finally had a little conversation with administrators. What's that mean? Well, I think we're required to have a sign that says it. Okay, but let's talk about where we put the sign, not at the top of the 5 stairs. But those are just advocacy things, working with the chancellor and having kind of a disability day. So we talked about what's it like to be a chair user when there are gravel all over the sidewalk. I don't know, you just kind of walk through it, don't you know? Not if you're using a wheelchair. Let's try it. Let's get you a wheelchair and you try it for a day. Let's try it for 2 hours. Within about 2.5 hours, I got the call. Okay, we get it. We're going to go sweep all the sidewalks and we're going to keep them clean. Did it mean that they didn't care? Absolutely not. It meant that sometimes you have to experience things to understand it. So part of my experience was not figuring out, just like any college student, what I want to do when I grow up. So I started thinking about advocacy kind of things because that was kind of my thing. And one and I ran into each other at different events and other places. And one day she called me and said, hey, I got this thing. It's Partners in Policy Making, and we need a director. Would you be interested? I just graduated from college, didn't know what I was going to do for sure. But what I did know is that I've got to take advantage of all the connections, because one of the things I knew for sure is that my physical disability really wasn't a disability. It was the perception of what my inabilities were based on my disability. And Wanda saw through that. Based on our interactions, she knew that I would probably be the right choice. So that's where we get up to, Wanda, thank you for the opportunity. You created whatever this is now. But I've been able to do a lot of those things because of my attitude and helping people better understand. I'll give a couple of quick examples of that. In Nashville, I had a lot of opportunity to do some consulting because the ADA was new, accessibility was new, and to be honest, there weren't people that looked like me in the community very often. So I assisted metro government in all kinds of areas. One of them was, before it even had a name, the Nashville Arena. Did some consulting with the Nashville Arena and the Predators. And there were just very little things that I recommended that turned into big things. For example, one of the things I recommended is in all the TVs, at least 2 or 3 of them through the concourses, turn on captioning. Simple. If a person can't hear well enough, then now they can read it. About the second game for the Predators, I got a call. And when I get a call, it's kind of what's happening now. The call was, we got so many comments. And I thought, uh-oh. It was not from people that needed closed captioning. It's from the fans standing in the long line that couldn't tell what was happening on the ice. They now could read what was happening and being said about the game. That's an accommodation that really is an accommodation for people with disabilities as much as it's for everyone. I consulted with MTA, Metro Transit Authority, now WeGo, back when they shifted their fleet, their entire fleet, to accessible buses. We looked at a couple different styles. One of them was the Gillig, which has the lowered floor fold-out ramp. And we were trying to figure out what is the best option. And I suggested we go with that one for 2 reasons. One, it was really easy, and the drivers liked it because even if there's a challenge with the mechanics, you could literally flop the ramp down with 1 finger. So it was a hit with the drivers. But you know who used it the most? Moms with strollers. Another opportunity for what looks like it's going to be a big deal to turn into something for everyone. So it's not for those people. These things that we do and make life easier for everyone are just that, for everyone. My last example is just looking at our community, looking around. So one of the things I had been asked to do by the Department of General Services, as I served on the Mayor's Advisory Committee, 2 administrations, all the pedigree stuff, blah, blah, blah. But the most important stuff was, what can I do to practically make a difference? And General Services had been working on lots of projects, as they always are around the city. But they would be doing construction, working on a road, primarily sidewalks. But they never put up a closed sidewalk sign. They put up a closed road sign. So if the chair users in the audience will understand exactly where I'm going, there's nothing worse than going 2 blocks down a narrow sidewalk to only come to a place where there is no more sidewalk. And you have to back up 2 blocks to get back to where you can turn around. So we talked about, what does that mean? It's not that hard. Put up a sign that says, this sidewalk is closed, cross here. That way, everybody can benefit. It's not just chair users. It's people walking, people who can't see that no longer is there a sidewalk. So those are the easy things that we can do. Remember I mentioned earlier that one of my biggest barriers is really just the perception. To me, I've had my disability all my life. Disability is more really a perception of what your own abilities are. And that was really never stood out to me as much as probably a decade ago. I was at a conference Wanda probably paid for it. I don't remember where it was now. But I saw a bumper sticker on the back of a wheelchair that really drove it home to me. And it said that disability is the only minority you can join at any time. That's a pretty profound statement. So a lot of times when I'm talking to people about, well, we got to spend another $5,000 to do that, I don't ever see anybody in a wheelchair in here. Why would we need to spend $5,000 or $10,000? Think about that, but also think about the bottom line and what it does for us as a community, to be a part of the community. I heard somebody talk a little bit earlier about you're a hero. I think we've all gotten that. We're just doing what we do every day, to be a part of the community, to be just like everyone else. So I will leave you with that thought. No matter where you are, and who you're interacting with, remember, we're all the same. We just do things differently. Don't we all? Thank you.
Profound. That's wisdom expressed. Thank you, Kevin. Very much so. We're going to end with Justin Curro. Justin is Assistant Commissioner and Deputy Chief Operations Officer of the Tennessee Department of Children's Services. Justin.
Thanks, Doc. Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Justin Curro. I've never done this before, talked about my disabilities. So I'll preface with that, but I'll also just follow up on Kevin's comment, who is a good assistant commissioner. I did not run this by my general counsel, so I'm also here just advocating and not representing the agency. I don't think I'll get in that much trouble, though. Yeah, so retired Army Green Beret, and excuse me, I had to take some notes just to keep my thoughts in order here. And currently working for Tennessee's Department of Children's Services. I am extremely grateful and honored that I was asked to speak, here tonight. And then also just to kind of represent the disabled veteran community, which we really haven't kind of talked about tonight. So my story, if we're going to stay in line with the theme tonight, 2002, I finally joined the Army. Signed up immediately after 9/11, and then it just took a little bit of time for me to get in, but finally joined in 2002 to go straight into Special Forces. I bypassed all the regular Army stuff and went from basic training to airborne school, jumped out of a couple planes, and then went straight to Fort Bragg and spent 2.5 years in the forests of Fayetteville, North Carolina, training to be a Green Beret. 2005, I showed up here into Tennessee and was stationed up the road at Fort Campbell. And within 30-ish days, I deployed to Iraq. Left my wife at the house and said, I'll see you in 8 months. On that trip, about 5 months in, experienced a traumatic brain injury due to an explosive device that went off near my truck, or inside my truck. Back then, TBIs weren't really called TBIs. It was just really, you had a concussion. And anybody that's played some football in their life or knows about concussions, you typically don't tell patients to just go in a dark room and sleep. That's what they told me to do. Kind of taken off mission status for a little bit and then went back to the teams and continued the deployment, thinking no big deal. Got home, however, and because I experienced permanent hearing loss due to the explosion and I was having some cognitive disabilities, the Army decided that they were going to med board me and medically separate me. And thank goodness, I don't know if the stars were aligned, but I was able to beat that med board and stayed in for another, goodness, 21 years or so. 22 and a half years, I've taken countless bumps and bruises. just by the nature of the business, right? Combat deployments, very, very difficult training before and after, and the worst of it all is losing your brothers. It just takes a toll on you, especially when you're in the same unit, which I was. I never, in the Army, typically, you do a couple years, you'll get moved to another base. For whatever reason, I stayed in the same unit my entire career. I never left Fort Campbell, which is unheard of. It was a blessing because, my wife and then now my twin daughters, they went to school in the same school their entire career, or their entire, childhood, and now they're at Tennessee Tech. I have twins. Doing great and wonderful things. However, it was also a curse in a little bit because I ran myself ragged, deployment after deployment after deployment after deployment, and it just took its toll. All that being said, I wouldn't change a bit of it. I had the best job in the world. It offered me the chance to work next to some of our nation's finest men and women in uniform. The things that I saw and observed and the people who mentored me completely changed me for a better person. And I couldn't be more grateful. Talk about my disabilities a little bit, minus the TBI that happened early on. I had a couple really bad falls in full kit, carrying 100 pounds of body armor and all the other stuff that we carry every single day. It just started to wear on me. And then over the course of the years, I was a bit stubborn and didn't really want to report it to anybody because I was afraid I was going to get taken off the teams, right? And that was like, at the end of that was the gold standard. It's what I did all the training for. I did not want to sit on staff and just be, a staff weenie, as we call them. Looking back, that probably wasn't the smartest idea, but it is what it is. But because of it, I have a bunch of titanium in my back now. I have a spinal cord stimulator that I need to recharge in my body about every 2 weeks. Due to the TBI, permanent hearing loss, and wicked migraines, from countless blast exposures. And then it's the mental health challenges that come with all that. And some of the suicidal ideations that I've had to carry with me over the years. And when you throw that on top of just normal life's challenges that we all deal with day to day, it's a challenge, right? So with all that, over the course of those many years, about 2 decades, maybe 6 or 7 years ago is when I finally started asking for help because I was spiraling. Really, really bad. And I had to find new ways to help kind of manage some of these challenges. And thankfully, there's a lot of services, both inside the Department of Defense, external organizations, nonprofits that are out there that were really, really helpful in my story to try to get back to where I was, performing at a standard that I thought I should have been. Voc rehab, occupational therapy, all of that stuff, minus the physical therapy stuff that I did at Shepherd Center, by the way. I wish I could grow gills and just live in that heated pool because I would live there every day. Just kind of helped me kind of refocus and get back on track and just live in day-to-day life like I should be, right? Anything from just how to stay organized and taking notes more effectively so I could remember important things was a challenge. Here I was a high performer, and then one day it was like everything turned off, and I had no idea who I was or how to perform anymore. On the physical side, just trying to pace myself, and I was for 20 years I was hardwired to go as fast as I possibly could, as hard as I possibly could, for as long as I possibly could, and at a point in my career where I was still trying to do that, I was destroying myself, right? In one of, I can't remember if it was voc rehab or occupational therapy, and she came up with that idea of pacing and really being mindful of it. It was like an alien thought to me. I couldn't believe how simple it was, right? And it completely changed my life. And I do that with everything, whether it's going for a walk with my dogs, going on a hike with my wife, walking in the mall. I know I got about 20 minutes before I got to sit down, no matter where I'm at. So yeah, those are the challenges that I deal with, you know, in the now, you know, phase of my life. And without those organizations and the people that were really helping us, and I'm not the only one. There was, you know, a lot of people that are experiencing the same thing in the service. Really doing wonderful work to kind of help us get back on track and stay and keep maintaining our ability to, you know, focus on our why and our purpose. And I think that's kind of another one of the things of then and now that dawned on me as I was kind of writing these notes today, because I was really nervous about talking about this stuff. That I think, you know, from a then and now perspective, older generations of veterans didn't have this level of care and foresight to kind of really prep them for the transition out of the Army, whether they're disabled or not. You know, and I can only speak from the Army side of the four services, but they are spending a lot of money in putting time against helping soldiers transition, and even more so for soldiers who are disabled. Because some of those soldiers come out with profound injuries that have changed their lives forever, and you talk to them and they're like, nothing happened. Like once they kind of figure out how to move on and deal with this new set of circumstances that their life has. I have a friend who's a Green Beret. He is a giant. He lost his leg in Afghanistan in a firefight, and fast forward to now, he's still in the Army, still an active Green Beret, and he went back to combat with one leg. And then when he came back from that, he went to the hardest school in the military, and passed scuba school down in Florida at Key West. And his name's Nick Lavery. If you want to look him up, he has a couple books out. He does a lot of speaking events. He is phenomenal, and I just cannot believe the stuff that he's been able to accomplish, you know, with the cards that he's been dealt. My biggest fear transitioning out of the Army, it wasn't so much that I wasn't going to be able to find a job or my next purpose. It really was I going to be able to dedicate 100% of my time to that next purpose, given all my health issues. Because I didn't want to be a liability and bring down the organization that I potentially will be working for. Be a liability to their mission and day-to-day operations. And so during my transition last year, I was fortunate enough to be selected to be a Tennessee Governor's Veterans Fellow. There's 4 picked out of the entire state, and I was able. And that's kind of how I got into this position I'm at now. They introduced us to all the agencies across state government, and we get a chance to meet the commissioners, all the deputy commissioners, and leadership, and kind of learn about agency mission and what they do. And I met Department of Children's Services Commissioner Quinn and Deputy Commissioner Verinsky, who's her chief of staff, and I was immediately hooked. I basically told the guy who's running the fellowship, I was like, I don't care about any other organizations. I want to do everything here at DCS. And I pretty much went there every single day, 5 days a week during my entire internship, and just absorbed as much as I possibly could in the hopes they would offer me a job. And it was October of this year, I just hit my 1-year mark in the agency helping kids. Not really helping kids, my main focus is operations, so everything I do, I try to make the case managers' lives as easy as possible, because they, I think, have one of the hardest jobs in the world. And if I can figure out solutions to make their daily life easier, then it's success in my eyes. But with that, during that internship, I was really hesitant to kind of talk about my disabilities because I didn't want to be defined by that, right? But I was noticing people looking at me because they would see me shifting in my chair, or I'd have to stand up in the middle of a meeting because my back was killing me, or I'd have to ask someone to repeat something 3 or 4 times just because I didn't understand what they were saying. And it's not that they were giving me weird looks. It was just like I noticed it was kind of a distraction a little bit because they never interacted with a disabled veteran before, and so I just made the calculated risk and just started talking about it. Right? Like, who cares? What's going to happen? They're not going to like me. And it was a great icebreaker because now, they kind of know what I deal with on the day-to-day. And, when they see me stand up in the middle of a meeting, even when the commissioner's talking, no one even bats an eye anymore because they know, oh, there's Justin. He's got the body of a 98-year-old man. And we're all good. So, I'll close with this. Just up the road at Fort Campbell, 50 to 100 people leave service every single day, whether they're getting out just because their contract's up or they're retiring. And, some of those folks have disabilities that, like I said, have profoundly changed their lives. And regardless of that disability, as they transition back into the civilian world, they can bring so much to our communities. They really, really can. Since I've taken this position, I've hired 2 more veterans on. One is a Navy EOD guy from San Diego, and then I also just hired a pilot at a 160th who never thought in a million years they'd be working in DCS like I am now, right? And they are absolutely crushing it. And then finally, when you meet a veteran with a disability, or whether you don't know if he has one or not, he or she has one or not, I'd ask just to kind of start with respect and curiosity, and not just assuming that they're messed up in the head or something like that, right? Just give them a chance, learn their story, and I think you will be utterly amazed at what those people can do for our community at large. So, thank you again for your time, and I appreciate it.
Well, you can see why we chose this group of community leaders, and though their stories are diverse, there are multiple interconnections, and I think Kevin talked about them, whether it's their courage, whether it's their tenacity, whether it's their perseverance, whether it's their high intelligence, or I would just say globally, their transformative approach to life and how they can transform the institutions they're in and the people around them. So thank you all so much. So I'm going to close the program now. I would like to thank all the community historians. Wanda and Megan definitely helped me put this together. Thank you, Jolene, for being here. The Downtown Public Library team with Rebecca Price and Courtney and the folks that help us put it on. Thanks, Samar, even though she's not here. Evelyn, that's fine. And then we'd like to thank the MLK Junior Magnet School principal, who has been here the whole time, Dr. Angela McShepard-Ray, who has allowed us to use her lovely building and her facility here. Thank you there, Angela. And lastly, I have to thank Marla Robertson. Marla has been my executive assistant through all these programs for the last 3 years, and if we didn't have Marla here, she's in the back, way better, then we wouldn't be able to do this. I'd like to also thank retired Brigadier General Scott Brower, who has been able to identify these amazing veterans for this program, and you'll hear stories from other veterans in the subsequent programs. He is the head of the Best Military Scholars Program at Vanderbilt, so tell Scott I said thank Justin. I appreciate it. Well, thank everybody for coming. There's food in the back. Please put on your coats and tap your feet a little bit because it's going to be cold out there. But thank everybody for coming. And thank my dais up here. Thanks, everybody, for coming.